Today, I will be analyzing a TED Talk given by Johann Hari. Not sure how to pronounce his last name correctly. Johann graduated from King's College in 2001, and then he worked for the independent news outlet until 2011, and he is a British writer and journalist. After 2011, he has since written 7 books and given a TED Talk over one of them. The TED Talk that he gives is titled, "Everything You Think You Know About Addiction Is Wrong." He starts off by telling how his family had a lot of drug problems, and that's how he kind of got involved in this idea and issue in the first place. And one of his earliest memories was him not being able to wake up a family member. He gives examples of how dependency doesn't seem to happen to those who are in hospitals for months on end using pain or taking pain meds and stuff like that. And so the idea of addiction to where you go and if you use the drug, you'll become dependent on it doesn't really add up, and people need to look more into it because we've kind of just been told this and we're all running with it. He explains that the idea of addiction comes from experiments that were performed way long ago about how a rat was put into a cage. It was isolated. It had nothing to do. It was just an empty cage, except it had 2 water bottles. One of the water bottles had drug water in it, and the other water bottle had regular water in it. And 9 out of 10 times, the rat chose the drug water. And then later down the line, he was working with the scientist who was like, let's retry this and let's give them an environment that they might be happy in instead of isolating them and making them really bored. And so they redid, and they basically just made this like rat paradise, rat heaven. And they had like the ability to reproduce as much as they would like. They had a ton of games to play. There were multiple rats, so they had social lives kind of. And there were 2 water bottles, one with drug water and one with regular water. And 9 times out of 10, the rats wanted nothing to do with the drug water. They always chose the regular water. And so a great human example of this that he gave was during the Vietnam War. 20% of the soldiers that were in Vietnam were known to be using heroin, and they were followed home to be studied to basically be, are you going to turn into a junkie? How is this going to play out? And they found that none of them did. They concluded that this, along with the 2 separate rat experiments, provides evidence against the fact, or with the fact that if you have a community, you're not even gonna worry about anything that, like, a drug problem won't be that big of a deal if you have a big community, because you have a sense of purpose and you're not just trying to replace the human bonding and connections with some type of drug or whatever your vice is to be. Johann proposes that addiction is just simply about your surroundings and your adaptation to your environment. And so solving your environmental issues could also solve your addiction issues. And in 2000, Johann traveled to Portugal to help support this idea. Portugal at the time had an awful drug problem. It was the worst in Europe. And they did the opposite of what every country had been doing to that point forward. And they legalized every single drug and put all of the money that they were spending into getting drugs off the street into giving every addict a job to wake up to in the morning, a family to go home to, a community that they had for on the weekends and stuff like that. And they found that their drug usage dropped immensely, as well as their cases of overdoses completely just like plummeted, which is crazy. And then Johann concludes by stating that obviously addiction is a problem, but the larger problem is the societies that we have created as a world of these isolated lives where we live in our phones, we live in our TVs, and we don't feel like we're being alone because we're texting our friend, but like in reality, you're literally laying in your bed alone. And so he proposes that in order to solve drug problems throughout the world, we need to solve the isolated lives problem. One strength I saw with Johann is that he never looked at his notes. He had a few notes written on his hand that I would catch in glimpses of the camera, but for the most part, I never saw him look at his hand. So I wouldn't even say that he followed an extemporaneous style. He followed a memorization style because he never had to remind himself of where he was at or what came next. Like, he knew exactly what he was talking about and when he needed to talk about it, which I thought was really great. His vocal variety was also so good. He shared a lot of personal things, and he shared a lot of things that are kind of hard to hear. And the way that he would, like, kind of get softer with his voice and, like, make it a little more emotional and gushy just really drew in the audience, and I found myself to be very intrigued the entire time. And then one of the last strengths I noticed was how organized his presentation was. So along with how much he had it memorized, he also had it organized and set up in such good ways that he would have a story, and then immediately he would have something to back that up. And then he would have another story that then just supported that story he just told with more stats to back that story up. And then he would have an emotional attention grabber. And I just thought that the organization of it was really well, and it worked really well to keep the attention of the audience. One weakness is that I don't think I heard a counter argument once. When you're giving a persuasive speech, one thing that I've been taught is that you have to build credibility to yourself and to your persuasion topic. And so to just hear like, oh, don't worry, addiction can just be solved by them making a friend and getting a job is like, okay, that'd be great if it was true, but where's your like hardcore evidence and truth about it? And like, give me a country that did the same thing that Portugal did and it didn't work, but then tell me that because Portugal did this, and this, that's why this is like still the better option. So it was just kind of frustrating it's like, it's not a La La Land, and we are talking about addiction here, and there are a lot of people that lose their lives to it and lose family members to it. So I wish that there would have been a little bit more like credibility built upon it. Another thing that he could improve on was that I know that the TED Talk stage is set up very odd with like the little red circle in the middle that you're standing on, but I felt like he was standing on a stage that was automatically on like a 180-degree swivel the entire time. And I know that it's set up in like 180-degree seating, but there was no, I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to stay here for a second and go all the way over here before I go back to the middle and then go back over here. Like, he literally just went like this. Like, he just went side to side the whole time. There was no here, there, here, there, here. Like, he had the opportunity to make it insanely attention grabbing and like, we have got to fix this. And it was just like, let's feed rats drugs. It kind of got a little weird sometimes there, and I don't think he was really prepared for the stage that he was going to be on. And then finally, I feel like he made the whole idea of addiction sound way too easy to fix. It would be ideal if giving someone a job and a friend would solve addiction, but unfortunately, that's not how that goes. I have addiction in my family, and I've seen it firsthand, and I've been affected by it. And so it was a little hard to hear. They just need a friend. That's all they need. You need to love them, and then they're going to get better. Because it's like, okay, no, not everyone though. So it was just a little frustrating that there was no like opposite. There was no extra stuff added onto it other than give them a better community and it'll all go away. So I wish that he would have touched more on other ways to solve drug problems. But overall, I thought this TED Talk was great. My analysis has run a little long, but it was a long TED Talk. I want to say it was like 16 or 17 minutes. He did a great job. He could use a hairbrush for sure. He had some puffy hair, but if you would like to go watch it, I highly recommend it. Thank you.